more difficult, but definitely within 2 or 3 years, the global central planners, the central bankers are running out of ways to create new money and credit to either reflate old bubbles or start new ones. So, they've gotten, like, as I've said in the past interviews with you over the years, they've created these currency swaps with trillions of dollars. These things have delayed a financial crisis since the 2008 financial crisis. They've delayed the next one, but there's limits to how much money and credit they can create without, destroying the currency or creating another global financial crisis. The real economy, though, since you asked about that, the real economy in the U.S. is not doing well, despite what the government statistics say. The Atlanta Fed, which I'm sure Janet Yellen's going to be calling and yelling them at, has revised downwards the Q1 2007 GDP. I think it went from like 3.4-ish to 0.6. Enormous revision already. Normally, they don't revise it down nearly that much. On the real Main Street economy, there's about 3,500 retail stores that are supposed to close in just the next few months. You could not say that was all because of Amazon and e-commerce. More likely, in my opinion, that was because the U.S. consumer, the middle class consumer, does not have reliable full-time jobs. They're trying to piece together a living. They have problems with debt, and they have problems trying to find a full-time job. And that means less discretionary spending. I've literally been at movie theaters on a Friday night in one of the richest counties here the last couple weeks, and the movie theaters on a Friday night are basically empty. So, and these are good movies like Fast and Furious and others. So there's a lot of real world evidence, Dave, that things are starting to slow down. There's restaurants putting enormous discounts, literally offering buy one, get one free, or 2 meals for $20 with an appetizer and a dessert and 2 entrees for $20 or $25 or $30 just to get people in the door, because they'd rather have, anyone at all, any customer at all, even making a tiny little margin or breaking even, than no one in the restaurant at all. So when you add these things up, I don't see that the economy is doing well. Yes, Donald Trump is getting some jobs back, but there's also a lot of jobs being lost. There's a lot of companies, whether it's Boeing or others, that are firing a lot of people and downsizing. It's going to be a very interesting time going forward. A lot of it, though, has to do with how the Federal Reserve reacts to Donald Trump, and how the Federal Reserve decides to, how many interest rate increases the Federal Reserve decides to do in 2017 and 2018. I interviewed on my channel over a month ago Danielle DiMartino Booth. She wrote Fed Up. She worked at the Dallas Federal Reserve for 9 years approximately, and she was not a PhD economist, Keynesian economist. She worked on Wall Street. She has an MBA and a journalist. She wrote investing articles for Dallas Morning News, I think. And so what she said, based on her contacts, listening to Fed speech and her contacts at the Federal Reserve, is that the Federal Reserve plans to do at least 2 to 3 more interest rate increases in 2017. And this is part of a plan to, make the economy look worse under Trump, so Trump can be blamed and the Republicans can be blamed. And so Democrats then in the 2018 congressional elections can start to win back seats. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out. The Federal Reserve, though, if they do continue to raise interest rates, they will be raising interest rates into a rapidly declining economy. So the economy, as you and me have discussed many times before, the economy didn't have a real recovery after the 2008 financial crisis. It was mostly, people who were close to Washington, D.C. or on Wall Street. People had the easiest access to the money trough, as Austrian school economists call the Cantillon effect. So the people who were closest to that money got almost zero interest money or credit to go buy assets like real estate or bonds or stocks, speculate in asset markets. So a lot of that money that was printed after the 2008 financial crisis to bail out the banks and help reflate the global economy did not really go into the people of Main Street to help them out and create jobs. It went to the status quo, went to large corporations to buy back their shares. It went to Wall Street and hedge funds to speculate with on asset prices and do leveraged trades and other speculations. And it went to big government in Washington, D.C. to continue the status quo and continue spending like crazy.
Something very interesting that you said, that the Fed, they're raising the interest rates into a very weak economy. And when we go back to 2006, 2007, they pretty much did the same exact thing. They started to raise the interest rates. Right now, I think the economy is a lot worse off than it was back then. And it looks like they're following the same pattern. And what's very interesting is that when Trump was campaigning, he said that, it's good that the dollar is high and the interest rates are a complete disaster, that they're so low. Now he came out, as the Fed was raising the interest rates, he came out and said the opposite now, where he's saying that the dollar has to be brought down and the interest rates should not be raised. They should be kept low. So he did the old 180 on the Fed and turned the whole thing around. And I don't know if he's doing this to set the Fed up because he realizes that the Fed is trying to set him up. So he reversed everything that he said, and the Fed and reversed everything that he was talking about during the campaign, just to maybe box in the Fed. What do you think about that?
So you think Trump is playing 4D chess then?
Yeah, I think that he might be smarter than we all think. I mean, I see signs that the deep state, the establishment, might be controlling him. Then sometimes I see light where he does things that, well, if it was really truly the deep state, the establishment, he would have followed through. For example, Syria, he fired the 59 Tomahawk missiles in there, and it looks like some of them got jammed by Putin. He warned them that he was doing this, and the establishment wanted to bring in 150,000 troops right after. They didn't want to wait. They wanted to go in there to get Assad. And really, there was no real damage on the base. I know he's out there, and the corporate media is out there saying there was a huge amount of damage on the base, but really the planes were flying a couple hours after the hit. So there was really not that much that was done to the base. And if he was truly going after Assad for this terrible chemical attack, would he go after Assad then? I mean, going after an air base that has no chemical weapons or anything like that made no sense. The objective, whatever it was not reached. And he didn't follow through with 150,000 troops. So to me, it seems like he held back on that. And of course, now we have the North Korea situation. So, and what he just did to the Fed. So parts, I feel like the deep state, the other parts, I'm saying he's playing this chess game and he's moving his pieces because he realized in the beginning that, okay, I came out, and we discussed this prior to the interview, like a racehorse. I signed a lot of executive orders. I called everyone fake news or very fake news, and it really wasn't working. And I don't know if he got a team together to strategize. I know people are saying, no, this can't be true. He's sold out. But again, I like to watch and see everyone's actions and what they do and how they react. And he's a smart guy. I mean, he built the business up. I know he received, billions or millions from his father, but, to get that to work and to get that moving, you have to have some type of smarts. He was telling us that everything was fake news for a very long time. And all of a sudden, he just realized that everything is not fake news. And he went back on everything that he said. Something just didn't make sense. And he might be playing a chess game. He might have had to stoop to their level to get what he wants. That might be. I don't know. I don't know what your take is on this.
Well, let's talk about the his strong dollar comments, and also the Federal Reserve and interest rates first before we talk about Syria and his foreign policy. So I think it's really dangerous for him to say he wants a weaker dollar, and his Treasury Secretary is echoing that. I've talked about this a lot in the past. It does not benefit the people on Main Street to have a weak currency, okay? It does not help savers. It does not help retirees. It does not help the middle class person who's trying to save money and, build a life for themselves. So, yes, he might say it may bring back jobs, but all these other countries, Dave, are all trying to devalue the currency and benefit from exports. This even precedes Keynesian economics. In Keynesian economics, this was one of the goals of Keynesian economics too, was to devalue currency to boost exports. This is actually from mercantilism, which is hundreds of years before Keynesian economics. So this has been tried a lot over the past by governments. It's a quick fix. It does not work in the long term. It actually makes things even worse in the long term. It puts a lot of inflation and stagflation, misallocation of capital into the global supply chain, and it hurts people's standards of living. But Trump is trying to boost the jobs numbers quickly. He has, a plan for value-added tax or border adjustment tax for fair. He talked about this in his interview recently with Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business on, I think it was April 12th, so it was last week. So I think Trump is no matter what he's able to accomplish, it's going to end up in stagflation. And yeah, maybe he is trying to play chess. I concede he's a very smart guy. He has definitely made mistakes, though. He surrounded himself with way too many neocons, way too many status quo people from Goldman Sachs. He's being way too kind to people like James Comey and others. He needs to start firing those people. Reince Priebus needs to be fired. He needs to clean house from anyone who is leaking or sabotaging him. One of the reasons, Dave, I think he's going after his foreign policy so much now is because his domestic policy, his domestic agenda is being leaked and sabotaged into futility. There's a lot of reasons why, but basically he needs the help of people in Congress. He needs Democrats' help either to swing over on votes, or he needs Republicans who are neocons or rhinos to concede things for him. And a lot of them are not going to do that, especially when they look at the regular polls when Trump is not doing well. And that's what a lot of the mainstream politicians do, is they look at the mainstream media and the regular polls, even though people like you and me don't look at those polls. And Trump is not doing well at all in those polls. So if Trump was doing better in those polls, you would see more politicians who were from the status quo, who are Democrats willing to swing over on votes to help him. You would see that. So you're not seeing that. Trump is having a really hard time getting his domestic policy agenda passed, whether that's repealing and replacing Obamacare with something good, the corporate tax cuts that he has promised. Those things, if they happen at all, Dave, they're going to take probably 2 or 3 years, especially the corporate tax cuts, because the Democrats really don't want that one, although he said he wants to do the healthcare first. I actually just saw a very interesting article by Christopher Whalen, and he was talking to his Wall Street contacts. And his Wall Street contacts, Dave, are saying that Donald Trump is giving up on corporate tax cuts and that a percentage of the money returning to the U.S. would be used to finance an infrastructure fund to build the roads and bridges that President Trump has recently been touting. And they're talking about some type of repatriation scheme to get corporations to bring back money, similar to Argentina in 2016 and Italy in 2015. So that would be a lot different than his campaign promises. What I would say, though, is that I think Trump wasn't aware the swamp was this powerful when he got here, before he got here to D.C. So literally everyone is fighting him here in Washington, D.C., whether they're a regular Republican or a Democrat, whether they're a politician or a bureaucrat. The majority of the bureaucrats here in Washington, D.C., more than 75% of them are hardcore Democrats. Many of them hate capitalism. Many of them make over $100,000 a year and drive BMWs or Mercedes, and they love Che Guevara and hate capitalism. So they're big, big hypocrites. And someone like Trump, who used to be a Democrat and, switched over, they hate someone like that. So it's these people, from what I've heard, Dave, is that Trump is having a real problem getting in a lot of his political appointees, not just through Congress, but just bureaucracy level people through the Office of Management and Personnel, I believe. So they're not getting security clearances. So this is typical, typical DC games where lawyers, and there's tons of lawyers here in the DC area, find a loophole to delay and sabotage things. The amount of leaks in the Trump administration is unprecedented. This will be Trump's administration unknowingly will be the most transparent presidential administration in U.S. history because of all the leaks that will come. There are low-level White House staff willing to take classified or top secret information, and they're willing to go to prison in order to leak it to the mainstream media. So that's why, in my opinion, that's why Trump almost every weekend, Dave, is going down to Florida and Mar-a-Lago. He's going down there not only because he likes Florida and it's his property and he can wine and dine whoever down there, but also because he can limit the amount of White House staff and other low-level government bureaucrats that can overhear conversations that are top secret and leak it, and that can get a hold of top secret or classified documents that they're not supposed to either see or leak to the mainstream media. So that's I don't think Trump would admit that publicly because that would make him look weak. But in my opinion, in actuality, that's what's really happening. So the swamp is all the corruption in D.C., and there's a massive amount of corruption. It's really it's gone to the levels, Dave, where it can barely keep things going. The amount of corruption, everything's just leaking. So things have gotten so immoral and corrupt here in DC. Yes, they've always been this way, but government has not always been this size. So this is a case where the parasite is basically going to kill the host, where big government is gotten to the point where they've teamed up with corporations to create fascism and cartels, and they're killing the rest of the host, which is the free market, whatever's left of the free market and small business, and a lot of other companies that don't have money to hire lobbyists or to compete with big business.
I agree with you that he's going down to Florida for his privacy so the leaks don't get out there. I think he's using that. I agree with you with that. But I also think what he's doing, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, I don't know. But from what I'm observing is that, when he was campaigning, he said everything's in a bubble. Bubbles everywhere. When he became president, he said, and he came out and he said the economy's a mess. I think when he got into office, he realized how bad it was and how bad things are. And I think normally in a normal situation, in a normal economy where you can go in there and bring back jobs and do the things you need to do, yes, his plans might have worked. And I think what is happening right now with all these jobs and manufacturing coming back, I think he started to realize that this cannot happen the way things are right now, and they have to change dramatically. And what I think he's planning, and this is why he's going down to Florida to make these plans, is to do things behind the scenes. He understands that the economy is not going to last the way we know it. Things are going to dramatically change, and he just can't come out to the American public and say, hey, listen, by the way, the economy, well, it's going to pop. We're going to have a bad collapse. Most of you are going to lose your jobs, and things are going to, remember 2008? Multiply that by 20. That's what it's going to look like. I don't think he can come out and say that. And I think what he's doing right now is, this is why this is why I say he's playing the game. He's playing the chess game, trying to maneuver and set things up. And this is why I said with the Fed how he reversed this. Not because, the dollar, if it's strong or weak, or the interest rates. I think what he's doing, he's trying to set it up where he's not to blame for what is happening. I think he's coming out with these statements to say, no. Look what the central bank just did. They're raising the interest rates, not good for the economy. Oh, look, they're making the dollar, strong. It's not good for the economy, or whatever they're doing. It's not good for the economy. He just switched everything around so he can point the finger at them instead of them pointing the finger at him. And I think this is what he might be setting up right now. That's my take on this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good strategy on his part. The other thing, and you brought this up with Syria and North Korea, is that the only real thing, unfortunately, Dave, that most Republicans and Democrats can agree on is U.S. foreign policy and empire is, if there's a threat of a bad dictator or we don't have control over this country anymore, is to go in and start bombing. So, that unfortunately in regular mainstream polls, it brings up Trump's approval rating to where maybe then he can flip some of these politicians to agree to some of his domestic policies that he wants to accomplish if he plays ball with some of the military industrial complex candidates or neocons or deep state. So he's playing a dangerous game of compromise with some of his foreign policy there to try to get some swing votes then for his domestic policy later on. So that would be something that I think he's trying to look to play because his domestic policies, the stuff he really wanted to get done to help the American people, Congress and DC are blocking a lot of that. The status quo has a lot of money in lobbying dollars. A lot of corporations don't want a lot of the policies that Trump wants for the American people. Deep down, Dave, I think he really does want to help the American people. But like you said, when he got to DC, he didn't realize things were this bad, this corrupt. Trump is spending an enormous amount of energy just to get little things done now. And I didn't think he expected he would have to do that. Like you said earlier, I think he expected he could come in here with a list of executive orders and just start doing that. And the bureaucrats here in DC would start complying. But that's not how things worked. And, Ronald Reagan tried to do very similar stuff. Trump has patterned a lot of his political game after Ronald Reagan. Trump thinks he's going to end up being like Ronald Reagan. I think he's going to, unfortunately, end up being more like Herbert Hoover or Jimmy Carter. So, and that's more because of the mess he inherited, and he's just in a bad situation. So, back to Ronald Reagan, though. Ronald Reagan tried to eliminate a lot of government agencies. He tried to defund them, like the Department of Education, the EPA, and others. And so what happened was he drastically reduced their funding for his 8 years as president. But the most of the bureaucrats are Democrats, but the bureaucrats basically knew they had tenure and that Ronald Reagan couldn't fire all the bureaucrats without a huge fight. I mean, remember the air traffic controller strikes. And so what happened then is the bureaucrats under Reagan just waited him out for 8 years. So I think, Trump is dealing with he's fighting so many different battles all over the place that he did not count on having to fight. So, you have the bureaucrats fighting him, you have the deep state fighting him, you have the mainstream media fighting him, you have the deep state fighting him in many different ways. You have the regular Democrats who are politicians in Congress fighting him. The Democrats won't even stand and clap for a lot of his speeches. These things are unprecedented. Trump has brought this up in his interview with Maria Bartiromo recently, how good his Supreme Court justice was, how he would follow the Constitution. And there was, Democrats who don't even want a pro-Constitution Supreme Court judge anymore because they think it's an old document and it doesn't apply anymore to their politically correct social justice warrior snowflake philosophies. So it's a huge battle here. It's going to be even if Trump gets a second term, Dave, it's going to be extremely difficult for him to get a lot of things done. I would love for him to get rid of Obamacare and find something allowing more competition in healthcare that can lower prices. But it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take at least 2 or 3 years. And by then, it might be to the point where the Republicans may lose seats in Congress. And if the Democrats gain back a lot of seats in Congress, Trump's ability to get things done are going to be even more difficult for his domestic policy.
Yeah, I mean, if he is truly under the control of the deep state, the establishment, and he's doing their bidding right now, which a lot of people are saying, they're very upset. They're very angry with Trump right now because they voted for him, and this is not what he was talking about. But if he is under the control of the deep state, the deep state, the establishment, they want war. They want to bring us to war. They've been trying to do this for a very long time for many different reasons, many different agendas, and we will know right off the bat where he stands, because if something does happen, like some type of false flag or anything like that from North Korea, we know right off the bat that if he goes to war and he says, let's do it, we know he's with the deep state. There's really no question about it, because if he wasn't with the deep state, he would put a halt to it. Let's investigate. Let's take a look. And a lot of people are saying this about Syria. But again, I think he's playing a game there where he warned them, made sure everything was gone. The missiles really didn't do that much damage. But he did bring the corporate media over to his side. He did bring a lot of the Democrats over to his side where, people are saying, okay, good. Now he's doing what we want. This might be part of his plan. We don't know right now.
Yeah. So if he can use that political capital that you mentioned he has now and use it to get some of the domestic policy stuff he wants passed, that would help everyday Americans more. But it's a dangerous game he's playing. As a libertarian, someone who thinks, taxation is theft, today is Tuesday, April 18th. Today is tax day. And I think, taxation is theft. It's immoral. There's a great Ron Paul Liberty report on this a couple days ago from his Mythbusters on the un-American income tax. But I really think it's a dangerous game he's playing by getting Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, mainstream media all to applaud him. But so far, I think Trump, he's stopped TPP. He's gotten a pro-Constitution Supreme Court justice. So he hasn't done everything bad. So he's done a few good things so far. But the other stuff he wanted to get done that he thought he would be able to do is being drastically slowed down and blocked by the status quo here in D.C. Dave, what really happens, and it's not just Trump, is every couple of years there's tons of hope and change candidates that are elected, whether they're in Congress or a new presidential candidate that come here to D.C. promising hope and change. And, they get swallowed up. Their message gets swallowed up or astroturfed by all the corruption and lobbying and bureaucracy and mainstream media here around D.C. that's covering D.C. So basically, there's been a lot of other hope and change candidates before Trump. I'm hoping, though, that he will figure out ways around this since he does have more business experience. He may be able to figure out some ways to improve the economy some way, somehow. but I don't think it's going to be easy. I think the real economy is going to have a lot worse stagflation, regardless of what happens with the Federal Reserve or whatever Trump is able to accomplish. So I think people are going to have to deal with a lot worse stagflation. If we do have a financial crisis, there would be temporary deflation, but we know from the past that the global central planners will not just stand there and allow deflation for a long period of time without massive new intervention and rules changes. And so unfortunately, I think there's going to be a lot more rules changes, and there's going to be a lot more intervention in markets. And, we're heading towards a very hardcore fascist totalitarian police state. Things are pretty bad now. They could get a lot worse. Had Hillary Clinton won, Dave, people like you and me, we may have had our website shut down. Our YouTube channel is already shut down, more than what Google and YouTube are already doing to us now. We discussed this beforehand. We may even be in prison. I heard Hillary Clinton wanted to throw people like Matt Drudge of the Drudge Report and Alex Jones in prison and basically eliminate free speech. But on college campuses, people are having, if you're a libertarian, your free speech is being eliminated. You don't have a right to free speech anymore. And pro-Trump people who were at a rally, over the weekend at Berkeley, like the police weren't even trying to protect them, allowing them free speech. They had to basically put on riot gear and protect themselves, just to go up in front and, say their points. Nonviolent people just trying to go up and get their point across that they have a different message than the mainstream message of political correctness and cultural Marxism.
Now, I agree with you that if Hillary was elected, things would be a lot different. But even so, the establishment, they're still following their goal and their path of getting rid of, some people call it the alternative media, some people call it the free media, some people call it the new media. But you could see it with YouTube and Google, where they took down Natural News. I mean, they brought his site back up. But you can see with YouTube where they are censoring, where they are pushing, different YouTube channels down. There's a boycott going on for advertisers. And it's not about hate speech. It's not about racism. Google actually had a very good system already in place where they did spot a lot of the channels that went against their terms. And it might have taken them a couple of hours, but most of the time they demonetize very, very quickly and they shut it down. I mean, the videos still play, the people just don't make money on it. And if you notice, the corporate media, it was very difficult to show which channels they were. You know what I'm saying? They showed maybe one, but they couldn't show like a whole mess. Usually they come out and they say, okay, here's the evidence. This channel, that channel, this channel, this channel. But they really didn't do that. And they tried to shut down Slingshot, where they said, oh, this was, teaching terrorists how to do things. And they actually gave the person a strike and they took down the video. And then the YouTubers all, went with him and said, listen, this had nothing to do. This has nothing to do with terrorism. This has nothing to do with teaching terrorists what to do. It was an instructional video and demonstrating a stab vest. And eventually YouTube brought it back up and they kind of apologized to him. So they really have nothing. They're just out there to censor as many people as they possibly can.
Yeah, I'm angry and frustrated at what YouTube has done to me. We're growing a lot bigger in 2016 than we are right now. So thankfully, I've gotten some Patreon donations coming in. We're going to have to be moving more of our content to our website now as backup, insurance plan. We're going to have additional plans. If they start shutting down websites, so I've heard rumors of that they're handing over the internet to the UN and they may start shutting down websites in the future as well. So that I just don't know, man. We're going to try to, it's really sad what's happening right now. So they've taken away $7,200 in annualized revenue from me, from YouTube. My analytics are down 80% since September 2016. And I am going to keep putting up my YouTube videos because I want to get my my voice out there and I want to get the information out there with the guests I interview and the perspective I have. I think I'm helping people. But, I also need to be able to earn a living and make a buck doing it. So it looks like we're going to have to move more of our content to our website right now. That looks like that's going to be one of the ways to protect myself. But who knows if they're going to keep changing this. This is what I talk about. The number one rule is the politicians and the bureaucrats and the elites, the central planners in power, are going to keep changing the rules. So, the rules are going to keep changing. There's going to be nothing fair there's been nothing fair about what's happened since the 2008 financial crisis. And there's going to be nothing fair about what they're going to do going forward. And that's just life. We're going to have to learn how to deal with it. Maybe what we should do then is put a GoFundMe page up and start taking micro donations of $1 from people, and actually put a class action lawsuit on YouTube and demand to show the censorship with their censorship algorithms, how they've been screwing us over. Because you're telling me you're getting a lot of views and your ad revenue is not rising proportionally to the views. So something's up then with that. It's just not right.
No, that is true. And I mean, a lot of people are feeling it right now, and it's tough for individuals to get by. And a lot of people said, something, I'm going to make this my full-time career so I can do the research, so I can, take a look at what's going on. And just like TV or anything else, commercials pay for the programming. Commercials pay for the research and the time and everything that you're putting into it. And yes, it might seem free, but as you know, nothing in this world is actually free. Someone is always paying someplace, and they need the advertisement revenue, because everyone needs to think about YouTube right now, because they have server farms, they have support people, they have all of this going on. And to get good talent on YouTube, yes, there's crap on YouTube, but to get creators on there, they decided that this would be a great model. And actually, it is a very good model, because you can see some of the big YouTube names, they have millions of people watching, more so than the corporate media, more so than regular TV. So they've actually created a very nice model. And right now it looks like the establishment is trying to destroy it, because there's too many people out there, too many people speaking their mind, too many people doing what they don't want them to do. And they're trying to control the entire situation.
Welcome to dystopia, man. I mean, it's going to be very difficult to get our word out there. Thankfully, Hillary Clinton did not win the election. If she had, we probably wouldn't even be having this conversation right now.
That is true.
So at least Trump in that regard is better than Hillary Clinton. I'm hoping he has not been totally captured by the deep state. So maybe he has some type of plan. Like you said, maybe it was just with Syria. It was just some type of fireworks. My friend Eric Dubin said it was a fireworks show. So I'm hoping he wasn't blackmailed or agreed to a deal with the deep state. I'm hoping that was just a fireworks show, and he's playing some type of long chess game to get his foreign policy, not his foreign policies, his domestic policies passed in the U.S. But, we're living in very unprecedented times. The people in power have unprecedented amounts of technology for spying. Look what Susan Rice and the Obama administration was able to do, spying on Trump and his incoming administration. So, if that had occurred decades ago, you would have seen a lot of Obama's people go to prison. They would have been in prison immediately. There would have been trials and going to prison. Instead, the mainstream media doesn't even really cover it. They just totally ignore it. If the mainstream media just totally chooses to ignore an enormous scandal like that, that's even larger than Watergate.
And it's even funny because when the hearings were going on with James Comey and Mike Rogers, and Trey Gowdy asked Comey, he actually backed him into a corner and said, was there a crime committed? Because under your laws and regulations, that if someone unmasks someone, that is a crime. And he asked him, why aren't you investigating? And he kind of stumbled around and saying, oh, we're really not looking into that. But he goes, but there was a crime committed and you're not doing anything?
Comey is a good lawyer. I am shocked he has not been fired yet. From all the different things I've heard about him and from different sources and read about his background, he was paid big bucks as a fixer by HSBC Bank to come in there and use his contacts as a government lawyer in the prosecutor's offices, U.S. district attorney's offices, to eliminate criminal charges for HSBC Bank for knowingly laundering billions of dollars in drug cartel money. And he was able to just eliminate the criminal charges and reduce it to fines. So, and then that was in exchange for a 3-year term, I think, on the HSBC board of directors. He was getting paid $6 million a year by the military industrial complex before he left those jobs. And I heard from different sources that Loretta Lynch, who was the former attorney general, ordered him to destroy Anthony Weiner's laptop, which had, videos and emails and child pedo pictures, child pornography pictures, incriminating, the Clintons and a lot of other prominent people. So if he did destroy that, man, he should be in prison not only should he be fired, he should be in prison the rest of his life. And yet Trump is on Maria Bartiromo last week on Fox Business saying he's going to give Comey a second chance and be a good guy. Trump needs to not be soft here. He's famous for firing people. These are the types of people that are all over DC. They need to be fired. Reince Priebus, Comey, Jared Kushner, if he's going to bring in Goldman Sachs people and be a globalist and, hardcore Democrat that's going to conflict with Trump's agenda, he needs to be fired too. So, all these people need to be fired. I don't know why Trump's never had a problem firing a lot of people in the past. I don't know why he's not doing it here.
Yeah, and that's the other part where you look at this and, Bannon is gone, Jared Kushner is there, Comey is still there, Priebus, and I agree with you. All these people, it needs to be wiped clean. And he really doesn't have a problem firing or getting rid of people. And all of a sudden he does. And that's why you see part like he's with the deep state, and then you see the other part where he's trying to do other things. And it looks like he's battling back and forth right now.
Exactly. Well, I said he's fighting a battle on many fronts. So it's not just the deep state he's fighting. He's fighting the bureaucracy here in Washington, D.C., who knows nothing about the deep state, but just hates Donald Trump because, number one, he switched parties. And number two, he's been saying all these things that are not politically correct or the cultural Marxism brainwash that they believe in. So he's fighting enemies from so many different fronts now. He's fighting so many battles, and it's taking up a lot of his time and energy that he didn't plan on fighting all these different battles. He should have fired so many different people already. General Flynn, the deep state got General Flynn out because Flynn was, willing to be friendly with Russia. And, he didn't want to go to war with Russia like John McCain and the other neocons. So I think Trump should have fought to keep Flynn. Yeah, Flynn's military industrial complex, but at least it seems like he was honest about what was going on with the Pedogate scandal. And he didn't want to, attack Putin. So, the deep state took him out. I thought Trump should have fought harder for him. It's just unfortunate. So there's a lot of mixed messages right now from Trump. I think it's too early to tell if he's a deep state agent yet. We'll have to see what happens in the coming months. But he is willing to do the one thing, Dave, that most people know about Trump is that he's a deal maker. So what worries me is if his poll numbers fall, if he's not willing to, if he's not able to get a lot of his other domestic agenda passed, he may be willing to do deals on U.S. foreign policy for bombings or wars in order to get the deep state or Democrats or other people or neocons to agree to his domestic policy measures. So, yes, that would help some Americans, but it would also, put a lot of innocent lives in other countries in jeopardy, too, with more wars and more bombs.
So, Jason, where do you think we're headed right now for the rest of the year with the economy around the world? What's your take on what you think is going to happen?
So I would say that China is definitely a big problem. I think China is going to have to, I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but China in the near future, Kyle Bass is going to be proven right. And the $1 trillion that China has set aside for their bailouts of their state-owned banks and their municipalities is probably not going to be enough. I think they've created over $30 trillion in credit in China. It's enormous. It's a massive amount of credit since the 2008 financial crisis. So they've created an enormous amount of credit that they've used some of it for infrastructure, but a lot of it has been wasted. And that's going to end up being a potentially new economic landmine. Japan is still a big problem. So I think, the central planners, in order to prevent a financial crisis from happening in 2017, are going to have to print a lot of trillions of dollars in currency swaps in the background. China and Russia, Dave, are transitioning to the next global financial system. They are putting pieces in place. Russia just opened up a office for their central bank in Beijing to make it easier to ship physical gold from Moscow to China, to mainland China, because there's logistic problems there, and to keep it away from the manipulated gold exchanges. And there are Silk Road and other currency swaps that China is setting up with their trading partners like Venezuela and Egypt. They have over 30 of these currency swap deals for liquidity. But these currency swap deals that China has set up, that the People's Bank of China has set up, are very small compared to what the Federal Reserve has set up in terms of liquidity pumps. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think, all this gunk and all these potential crises and all the money papered over means stagflation. We are going to have asset prices fall. I don't know if they're going to happen in 2017, but in the next 2 to 3 years, they're very high. The valuations and these asset prices are, for the stock market, it's getting to one of the 4 most overvalued stock markets in history. 1929, 1999, 2007, and the current stock market are the 4 highest in history. There's a lot of different valuation metrics you can look at. So I'm not going to say this is definitely the most overvalued stock market in history, but it's certainly one of the 4. And, the bond market has been inflated for a while. We've had a 35-year plus bond bull market that's been artificial because of central banks manipulating interest rates lower and lower after each financial crisis to try to stimulate, economic growth or the wealth effect. And the real estate markets have been reinflated. We have a subprime auto loan bubble that's pretty large. It's over $1 trillion. We have a student loan debt crisis. So all these things are going to come to a head in the next couple years. I don't think it's smart to pick out an exact time frame saying it's guaranteed something happens in 2017. But I think for your listeners out there, definitely have some Bitcoin, definitely have some physical gold and silver. And yes, the dollar may be too strong, according to Trump and his Treasury Secretary, but you also need cash for opportunity. So I think having US dollars in case there is a crash in real estate or a crash in regular stocks and things go on sale, having a cash for an opportunity to buy assets at fire sale prices is a good idea, because if there is a crash, the probability then is pretty high that the central banks could step in about 6 months later. Certainly, they're not going to let things stay low without more intervention. This is just how all the central bankers believe in their interventionist policies. So 6 to 12 months, if there is an asset price correction, if you do have cash, you're going to have that opportunity window to go and buy assets for very cheap before the central bankers go and try to reflate them higher. So you can make an enormous profit, life-changing profits then during that time, but you need cash in order to have the opportunity. So if your listeners don't want to make a lot of complicated investments out there, if you just own those 4 things, US dollars, Bitcoin, physical gold and silver, you will have the liquidity and cash to provide yourself with opportunities during the next crisis.
Jason, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. Once again, how can people see your work?
They should go to the wallstreetformainstreet.com website. That's WLSTFRMAINST.com. I'd like to move people over there onto our email list just in case our YouTube channel is shut down, because we're starting to get more of our videos demonetized. I'm actually getting emails from YouTube about it. Our YouTube channel is also still up for now. It has over 2.6 million views and almost 15,000 subscribers. So hopefully this interview will get me over 15,000 subscribers. I know your audience is larger than mine. That's it for now. I'm a free agent again. I don't have a business partner anymore, so I am looking for a new potential business partner and investors into my business to grow it. So if anyone's interested in that, they can just email me, wallstreetformainstreet@gmail.com.
Jason, thank you very much once again. Thank you.
You're welcome, Dave.